Hello diplomats, I hope you're all doing good and finding yourself safe. Today in this video we are going to discuss a Right to Information Act, and the reason why we are discussing RTI today is PM Cares is in news, and there are many questions being asked about the scrutiny factor regarding to PM Cares and how the funds are being dispersed and for what purposes it is being used. So on that note, people have filed RTI to know the details and the asking for financial transparency associated with it. But however, now the controversy related to it is about whether it constitutes a public authority or not. So that is one reason that we are discussing RTI. And two, we are also discussing RTI because last year RTI has discovered that there were more than 700 crores that have been diverted from Delhi's special subcomponent plan intended for the development of SEs for Commonwealth Games. So this was also other thing that was related to RTI. Another important thing about RTI is also the Right to Information Amendment Bill 2019 intends to amend the RTI Act 2005 was also in news for last year. So we're just trying to have brief account of why RTI was in news in past 2-3 years. So that is a brief introduction. And apart from this introduction, why in first place this is in news is because when a institution like PM Cares, when it's a fund, the fund has been constituted, so it is by naturally the right of the citizens to know how that fund and how the money related to it are being used. However, now the controversy is, does that really can be called a public authority? Will that be covered under RTI or not is a question. So on that regard, we are going to understand Right to Information Act. So there is certain genesis to understand Right to Information Act. Because post 90s in the development framework of India, we had LPG reforms, liberalization, privatization and globalization. Post that liberalization era, we have moved to massive economic decentralization, where we have opened the gates of country's economy for multiple players and international players to come and set up industries, start their own economic activities and steer business plans. On that note, we've also had something called political decentralization happening. That is where we've got 73rd, 74 Amendment Act, where we gave a lot of political autonomy to the local governments. And then other processes, we were also constantly trying to embark upon the welfare nature of the Indian state, where the Indian state was constantly trying to bring in the rights-based framework so that it protects the marginalized and vulnerable sections of its of the society. So there is, if you want to put it in a conceptual way, there are three things happening. One, there is liberalization, privatization, globalization happening. There is also political decentralization happening, where we're giving more power to the local governments and we are improving the nature of democracy by bringing in participatory governance and participatory democracy. On the other hand, the triad of this triangle could be something like the welfare nature of the state that is being increasing, and there is expanding nature of welfare state in the framework of rights to base. We have right to education, we have right to information, we have right to work. So the entire rights based framework in this scenario is something that is crucial to understand. So what is this dynamic process that is helping? This dynamic process of these three issues is helping Indian state to actually have a model of good governance. So this entire good governance, which is being steered by World Bank, and for the first time it appeared in the World Bank documents, talks about good governance, which is essential for the development of the country's development of the economy. So now what is good governance? So according to World Bank reports, the good governance has important twin principle called accountability and transparency. So taking a leaf from the good governance agenda that has been steered by World Bank, India has awakened and realized that the transparency and accountability are crucial factors in governance. On that backdrop, we are today trying to understand Right to Information Act. So since we started saying that this is a rights-based framework and the welfare nature of the state, so the fundamental thing that I would want to start is to understand its constitutional backing. In Menaka Gandhi case, the Supreme Court of India reaffirmed that the right to information is part of Article 21. So Article 21 is right to life. So Article 21, the right to life, has been interpreted in various cases in varied way, increasing the scope of the right as a fundamental right for the citizen. So in this framework, it's not mere existence as a human. It's an existence with dignity and respect, having entitlement to certain rights. So now what are those certain rights? It could be right to dignity, it could be right to equality, it could be right to having information, it could be right to have a dignified life. So in that case, so how is right to information related to right to life? You want to, let's assume there's an ex-person who wants to go to a public institution. He or she wants to know the information related to that particular institution. So how will they approach? The very fundamental approach towards functioning of that institution, how it is being functioned, what is its significance, can be accessed through information by the citizen. So when you have a lack of information about one particular endeavor that you want to do in your life, you will not be able to take an informed choice. To take informed choice based upon a given information, right to information as a fundamental right enhances the sphere of your knowledge to take better decisions and to be as a better citizen in a democracy. Hence, theoretical and philosophical basis of right to information is enhancing your personhood, enhancing your individuality, and enhancing your rights as a citizen in a democracy. So having established that right to information is part of Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, now let's understand what are the details, provisions, important factors of right to information, what exactly right to information brought to the citizenry, how effectively it can deal with enhancing the democratic process of institutions, and how it can bring in the good governance. Now we are starting what is RTI. Under RTI Act 2005, public authorities are required to make disclosures on various aspects. So what is this disclosure? Disclosure is that if somebody asks you an information, they are entitled constitutionally to know what it entails. So that is called disclosure. So that means the disclosure factor has been made mandated by RTI 2005. Now what does this include? Various aspects of structure and also function. This includes disclosure on their organization, functions and structure. Second, the powers and duties of its officers and employees. This shows the ambit of their power, and this can also help in scrutinizing the power of a public authority. 3, the most important factor why the PM Cares is there, why we're kicking in this aspect, is the financial information. And the intent of such suo motu disclosures is that public should need minimum recourse through the act to obtain such information. So hence information, the quote unquote information, becomes a very fundamental factor in understanding how one group, how XYZ institutions or organizations work. Now what institutions? Let's say I have a private company. Can an ex-citizen come and ask information in structure and functioning of my company? Yes or no? Whether he has a right or not, yes or no, is something that we are going to discuss now. So what does this right to information include? The right to information, when a citizen files an RTI, the information could be in the form of documents, files or electronic records under the control of public authority. The intent behind the enactment of Act is to promote transparency and accountability in working of public authorities. So public authorities is the word, is an important directive that keeps coming in the Act. Now what exactly is this public authority? Public authority, as quoted in RTI 2005 Act, includes bodies of self-government established under the Constitution of India or under any law or government notification. So these come under public authorities. For instance, these includes ministries, public sector undertakings and regulators. It also includes entities owned, controlled and substantially financed by Government of India, by the government. It could be for that matter non-governmental organizations where they are substantially financed directly or indirectly by the government. Hence, these are the three subheadings that the RTI Act clearly talks about what amounts or what constitutes to become a public authority. Now, so how is the Right to Information Act enforced? The Act has established a 3-tier structure for enforcing the right to information guaranteed under the Act. So what are they? Fundamentally, public authorities designate some of its officers as public information officers. Many of us might have heard PIOs. So you have heard, now where is your file? The file is with the PIO. So what is this PIO is? Public information officers. Then your first request for RTI goes to central or state assistant public information officer, and then it goes to state or central public information officer designated by the public authorities. Then these officers are required to provide an information to an RTI applicant within 30 days of request. So this could possibly be also a prelims question, that RTI does not have any time limit for its enforcement. It's factually incorrect. It does have a enforcement, because RTI entails not just giving information, but giving information in timely manner is something that we are wanting to establish accountability and transparency. Now appeals from their decisions go to an appellate authority. Now we also have an appellate authority. Appeals against the order of the appellate authority can directly go to the State Information Commission or the Central Information Commission. And most importantly, the State Information Commission and Central Information Commission are not constitutional bodies, they are statutory bodies. And next, these information commissions consist of Chief Information Commission and up to 10 information commissioners. So this is the rough structure of the Information Commission. Then, so now we've understood the nemesis of RTI. Then we've understood what amounts to public authority. Then we've understood what exactly is the mechanism involved with the RTI filing process and the authorities involved in it. Now, what exactly the RTI do? I think the larger governance, when you see the part from the governance part of the syllabus, this is where you understand what exactly RTI do. You think right to information enhances democratic rights? Do you think it will bring in transparency and accountability? Do you think it will reshuffle the way governance is imagined? Or do you think RTI will help in bringing in different forms of governance mechanisms in the new age of globalization? So there could be various ways of asking questions in mains under governance subheading. Now what exactly RTI does? Fundamentally, since we are dealing with the demystified GS2 part, what does RTI do? RTI actually helped to change the relationship between the citizen and the government. How? The citizen is not a mere consumer of the information that is being given in the public domain, but the citizen has a right to ask for the information that he or she wants from the public authorities. That way, it changed the relationship between the citizen and the government. Next, most importantly, we have something called post-colonial hangover or the colonial hangover, that we are being colonized and we have certain colonial conceptions of power. So in that light, what did RTI do is RTI actually dismantled the colonial assumptions of power, and it dismantled the illegitimate concentration of power. So why we call illegitimate concentration of power? Power as a concept always needs to substantiate it by accountability and transparency. If one does not, he or she or an institution or a government does not give in the information about the accountability or transparency, it means it's illegitimately usurping or concentrating power in its hands. It is not definitely a healthy factor for a smooth functioning in a democracy. Next, it legitimizes the demand for answers. So we are not randomly asking questions. We are not randomly asking for a functioning of an organization or a public authority. We are asking legitimately questions about that particular power or that particular organization, because it is our constitutional right, because it also has a legal backing, it also has a statutory backing. Next, it is also kind of like I said about, it also changed the conception of colonial understanding and feudal understanding of power that essentially RTI has challenged. And most importantly, there's certain culture of secrecy. RTI mandates the replacements of prevailing understanding of secrecy of power and culture, and bringing in the culture of transparency. That if we ask, let's say you're going to, as simple as a mundane, you see an old woman, when you go to a public office, you see an old woman coming for a pension. Her monthly pension as part of the welfare activities that the state is guaranteeing to that old woman or a man, has been not been given for past 2 months. So he or she goes to particular office that is concerned at a local level and ask, why am I not getting it? The public authority, the public officer can easily says, why should we tell you? We are not going to tell you. You can do whatever you want. RTA exactly questions this unequal concentration of power. As a citizen, that old woman who's coming to the government office has every right to ask why his or her pension is not being reached on time. This is actually changing the way governance is imagined. RTI has brought a reimagination of governance mechanisms in the country. And secondly, it has brought a strong sense of social accountability in the public institutions and also with the government. So let's say you're driving a bike and there's a problem with the road. You could directly go to the roads and buildings department of that particular state concern. Then you can find an RTI saying what is the budget of the road laid, who are the officers involved in it, what is the quality assessment of it, and why is the road being in the present situation the way it is. So the example that I gave really equips the citizen to ask questions to the government, making you a direct participant in the governance process. That is what RTI has brought in. And it has also made citizens' movement very energetic and courageous. So if you look at the governance structures in post-independent India, you have seen certain various movements. We could call it social movements. Then there is a phase of new social movements. Then there is a phase of contemporary social movements. So in this entire bandwidth of social movements, this active citizenry participation, backed by constitution, backed by a law, is actually bringing in a lot of energy among the civil society to bring in more changes, to bring in more democratic reforms in functioning of the state. Hence, it is also bringing new energy to the way citizens are imagining their participation with the state and with the government. Now, what are the problems? So we also have problems with the RTI, which are marred, which is actually being a hindrance for the citizens. The first thing is there is an erosion of independence of information commissions at the state level and also at the national level. That is one problem. And second problem is that Supreme Court of India has held that right to information as being an integral part of right to freedom of expression under Article 19 Clause 1 Subclause A is also the weakening the transparency law would negate that guarantee. So now what is happening? So sometimes what happens is we are asking for transparency. The very fact that you're asking for transparency is something that you're exercising your freedom of expression and speech to have a better information about your expression. Sometimes what is happening is this is clashing with the law, saying that certain forms of information cannot be given. Right. So there is a clash between that some sets of information is not being given for the smooth functioning of the state, is clashing with your fundamental exercise of your duty, fundamental exercise of your fundamental right of your expression in terms of exercising your Article 19. So Article 19 and Article 21 might possibly clash with certain forms of information where the government can withhold. This is one such clash that we have a problem. And the second is we need to improve efficiency. Efficiency has been a problem. Then there is also a problem of filling up of vacancies. There are a lot of vacancies across the state information commissions that are not being filled over a period of time. That is actually hampering the process of RTI application filing and also retrieving information from the government. And next, fines are not being imposed on time. They are being rarely imposed because it is a time-bound information dissemination process, and there's also penalizing factor attached to it, because if the information is not given in time, even if it's given in time, if it is given incorrect way, you're supposed to penalize that particular officer. That's exactly the backbone of this law. But however, that fundamental thing has been not being implemented well. That is also a problem. Then you have some information which is very vague, which is not very specific. Vague information is always a problem, even with the UPSC. No matter how many books you read, no matter how much you listen, no matter how much you read, systematizing your information in a very synchronistic manner is something that you want as a person. So what is the difference between information and knowledge? Information could be anything. Information could be with a little piece of a red book, it could be about a tree, about a bottle, about a table, about a chair. but having information in a synchronized manner will lead to certain knowledge, so that you can ask further more questions. So you cannot ask question with vague information, right? So giving vague information is also another problem. Then unconnected information to the application, because and there's this huge sense of impunity. Impunity is you're not being punished for what you're doing incorrectly. That's also another problem. Another problem we have is there are certain huge problems in terms of availability of records. As early as I think I saw it in today's newspaper or yesterday's newspaper, I think it was in Hyderabad. Somebody, a person filed about a case about archaeological archives about the monuments, and that particular department took that person to the room and asked him, this is the record room, you can just go and look for the records. There is also certain lax attitude within the institutions in terms of giving the information. This is one part. And another important part about last year's proposal of amendment is, which there was also huge hue and cry across the nation, is diluting the important provisions of RTI was in news. What was those propositions? The propositions was RTI. I will briefly read it out, the differences between the RTI Act 2005 and the proposed amendment bill in 2019. So it's simple. One is with the term of the officers and the chief central and state information officers. Second is about the quantum of salary, and third one was in deductions in salary and the way the information commissions function. So what does the amendment say? Amendments try to say that the term of office, the conditions of office are going to be now changed. It is going to be at the behest of the central government. Salaries, allowances, terms of conditions of service will be determined by the central government. The bill also removes certain provisions such as pension provisions after the retirement. It also aims to reduce the salaries. It also aims to reduce the pensionable amount that will be withdrawn later. And also there would be more control and more scrutiny by the central government on these institutions. So these were the proposed amendments. However, the problem to these proposed amendments is, if the terms of the conditions, if the tenure, if the salary, retirement, pension and structuring of the particular institutions, if they are being compromised, it means there is a possibility of being threatened for giving XYZ amounts of information or XYZ type of information. So in this process, in such proposals, why it is problem is because it might actually threaten the very functioning of RTI. It might threaten the very reason why RTI has brought into public domain. Hence, this was a controversy. So now in this video, we have understood what is the philosophical and theoretical underpinnings of good governance, why accountability, transparency matters, why RTI is important in furthering the rights-based agenda or in a country like India, which claims itself to be a good functioning democracy, and most importantly, the provisions related to RTI, the public authority related to RTI, the way the RTI can be functioned, the important factors related to RTI, and most importantly, the recent changes related to RTI, the proposed amendment bill. So this roughly covers Right to Information Act 2005 and its importance, which can be put under the subheading of governance factor of General Studies 2 of UPSC main syllabus. So I hope you've understood the concept clearly, not just in terms of its provisions in factual way, but also in an analytical way, because questions from governance are most often analytical. So I hope you've understood these concepts in a detailed manner. If you have any questions, you can approach us, comment, or let us know about this. Thank you very much.